Well, thank you all for putting up with me this morning. I don't know about your business. I don't know, I can't tell you a lot about procurement, the process, how it works, how you become better at it. But I think I can tell you or share with you some of the lessons I've learned about relationships and influencing behavior. Because what I found, both when I was in the government and in the years since, where I've worked in the corporate world, everything's about relationships, both at work and, of course, even at home. And how we interact with others greatly influences the sort of responses we get. I can't think of a single business that success isn't based on those kinds of interactions. When I left the FBI, I went to work for Control Risk, which is an international risk consultancy based here in London. And we were involved in kidnappings. So it's an easy thing, like I arrived at Heathrow yesterday and the gentleman at the immigration booth said, well, what kind of business are you in? And instead of saying kidnap consulting, which I knew would have taken a lot of time, I'm a consultant. Oh, have a nice day. So I've learned a few things there too. But that's what we did. We helped corporations avoid having their people become kidnapped, and if they were, how to unkidnap them, for lack of a better term. But it's all about relationships. So let me go through some of that. There is a bit of art to negotiations. There's also a bit of science. But there we go. Oh, that's my advertisement. Like all good speakers, I've written a book. And I'm told they make lovely Christmas gifts. And it's by Random House. You can also get it on Kindle. And it kind of chronicles my career in the FBI, but also the evolution of negotiations as a profession. When I first got into the FBI, we didn't really have much of a process for dealing with people using communication skills. And I'll make fun of where Andrea is from in New York, because they sort of started this process. They'd go to a situation, somebody would be in a bank, they'd rob, they're holding hostages, and the hostage taker would say, hey, give me a getaway car, I'm going to kill the hostages. And the cops would say, no, you ain't getting it. Come out, or we're going to come in and we're going to kill you. And the bad guy would say, oh yeah? Oh yeah? You talking to me? I'll kill the hostages. And it would always end bad, because we'd go in and we'd kill the bad guy, or the bad guy would kill us, or worse, the cops would kill the hostages. Oops, my bad. Okay? We figured it had to be a better way. So maybe instead of just charging in, and the philosopher Maslow said, if you are a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. So you need a lot more in your toolbox than your power, your hammer. So we learned to slow things down, contain a situation, so whatever's going on inside this bank, this hijacking, whatever it might be, prison, that it doesn't get worse. And then we began the process of communicating with people to help resolve the conflicts and issues that they're facing. And we have a very high success rate. And I'm going to share some of those stories with you today. So what are the objectives that we would share both in law enforcement and certainly in the business world? To be successful, you want to avoid conflict. That's a no-brainer. You want to gain cooperation, promote team cohesion and productivity. That's what this conference is about. Learning to work together, learning effective methods and approaches. Maintain a positive work environment, encourage innovation, and acknowledge the contributions of others and share credit. So these are just some of the basic things we try to do to have a harmonious and successful workplace. Now, in my former life, we had some other tools. And you've all heard about the militarization of police. This is a police department, by the way. This isn't the Delta Force. And this is an incident that happened in Antioch, California, years ago. So there's this terrible divorce, and the man and woman have 2 young children, and he gets to visit every Sunday. He picks up the kids, takes them for the weekend. Well, one afternoon, he's a very controlling, manipulating guy, very unhappy about this separation, this divorce. So he brings the kids to a church parking lot where she's now to resume custody. And as the wife pulls up in her car next to his, he has a gun pointed to the little 5-year-old daughter's head. And he says, get in the car or I'll kill her. The former wife gets in the car. They drive back to the home they used to share. And he berates her and insults her and calls her all sorts of terrible things. And he says, now get out of the house. I'm keeping the kids. And you call the police, I'll kill the kids. She leaves the house. What does she do? Of course, she calls the police. The police show up, surround the house. He ends up being barricaded in the master bedroom with the 2 young children. Police negotiator arrives and starts to talk with him. This is the preferred method to de-escalate, to de-emotionalize, to get people to think more clearly and make better decisions. No big secret there. Well, a police captain shows up after about 2 hours and says, you know, we have a very busy evening. There's a lot of stuff going on. We're short of manpower. You just tell that son of a bitch to let his kids go and come out, or we're going to come in and get him. And the negotiator says, boss, we don't put a deadline on people like that. That's just going to create a problem. And of course, being a good boss, he says, maybe you didn't hear what I said. So the negotiator does what he's told. He tells the man, my boss wants you to come out in 5 minutes. 3 gunshots are heard from the bedroom. The man kills his 2 children and kills himself. Terrible, terrible management. Turning away from using the opportunity to communicate, to diffuse anger, to create a relationship of trust so we could have at least made a good effort to influence this man not to harm his children. Now, the key to this was the captain had 2 young children at home. And the captain says to himself, as any of us in here would, presumably, I cannot envision a circumstance under which I would harm my children. I can't dream one up. I can't conjure up anything that would make me harm one of my children, except for the son sometimes, but that's a different story. It was only when he wrecked the car, it wasn't important. But anyway, I couldn't do that. And in the captain's mind, it's the same thing. This man won't hurt his own children. People will kill people they love and they care about for reasons that we may think are misguided and misunderstood. But emotions are strong drivers. And I'll tell you more about that. Before I do, I got to tell you a little anecdote. I used to have a sort of an unusual life, and my phone went off a lot, and I was always traveling, and you know, my wife raised 3 great kids. I think I remember their names, but I'd get home from time to time. Once I'm home for the 4th of July event in Washington, D.C., biggest fireworks display. It's a grand event, and we're there on the Mall of Washington. Friends of the park police used to let me park my car up there, and next thing you know, I had a lot of neighbors that wanted to become part of my family. So we're down there with about 30 or 40 people waiting for the fireworks, and my beeper goes off, back when we had beepers. And I pull out my little phone. This is a long time ago. And I recognize the number is from South Carolina, and I call the number, and it's one of my FBI field negotiators. And he says, listen, I'm en route to Charleston Harbor, where a guy with a high-powered rifle has taken over a decommissioned U.S. aircraft carrier that is now a museum, USS Yorktown. He's fired off some shots. He's apparently angry at something. Now, even though I'd had several adult beverages, baked beans, potato salad, ribs, feeling pretty good 4th of July on my own time, then I have this vision of excellence, and I said, listen, it's the 4th of July, highly symbolic day. It's a U.S. Navy ship, highly symbolic target. I think you're dealing with a veteran who probably feels like he's not been treated well, so treat him well. Talk to him, listen to him, not a problem. And when you get there, find out more information, call me back. I will have some more sage advice for you at that time. Honey, would you get me another beer? You're over close to the cooler. No, the big one, yeah. All right, so there's where we are. An hour later, my phone beeper goes off again with another number in South Carolina. I call the number, feeling pretty good about myself, and I dial that number, and somebody answers the phone. Hello, and I said, hi, this is Gary Noesner. Is Mike Duke there? That was the name of my guy. No, not there. I said, is this the command post? No, it's not. Is this the negotiation room? No, it's not. And then the person on the other end of the phone says, who did you say you were? Well, I'm Gary Noesner. I'm the chief hostage negotiator with the FBI. And he says, I guess I'm in more trouble than I thought. Now, in my profession, that's called a clue. I said, you wouldn't by any chance be the guy with a gun, are you? Yes, I am. How are you doing? Well, I've had better days. Unbeknownst to my negotiator, the number he gave me, which was to the souvenir shop where the command post was, could also be answered up in the aircraft carrier. So I ended up talking to Jim for a period of time from 400 miles away, and Jim was just what we said. A veteran who didn't feel like he'd been taken care of. He had drug dependency, alcohol dependency, and was going through a highly emotional time. Now, instead of doing the standard law enforcement, you better put your gun down or we're going to come up and kill you, I listened to Jim. And I listened to him for as long as I thought I could. I had to get him switched back locally to talk to them, and I was successful in doing that. Jim wanted to be heard. When Jim goes to an aircraft carrier with a high-powered rifle, and he doesn't kill anybody, but he discharges the weapon, he is definitely going to get some attention. Now, what does he want to say? What's the burden he's carrying around? What are the problems that he feels are being unaddressed? People want to be listened to, and they want to be understood. Never forget that. It's a powerful way to be of influence. I'll talk more about that. So I know you can't read this writing, so I'll read some of it. Forgive me for it being so small. The prognosis for a positive outcome is unlikely when we are in a highly emotionally charged situation. That's just not in law enforcement, that's in life. The first goal is to de-escalate any confrontation, to create an atmosphere conducive to cooperation. Remember, it takes two people to argue. It takes two people to have a disagreement. If you refuse to counterattack, you stand a better chance of getting that person to back off from their rigid, inflexible, perhaps hostile position. Creating a positive relationship is the most likely path to cooperation. You know, when I did the consulting work, and I'm working with corporations, the insurance and the relationships they buy with the consultancy to have their employees covered if they're kidnapped is a highly competitive business. And I never lost a client. In the 5 full-time years I did that, never lost a client. Why? It's because of relationship. The company I worked for would often be the most expensive service provider. But there was a qualitative difference, but more importantly, there was a relationship difference. My clients knew any problem 24/7. I don't call the company switchboard, I call Gary. And Gary's going to be responsive. There will be problems in any relationship. There will be hitches in what service you are providing. That's to be expected. But what the client wants is that you will step up to the plate and resolve it dependably, reliably. And they're confident that after that one phone call, that it's not going to ruin the rest of the day, you're on the job. Once you have that kind of relationship established, clients will stick with you even if your service is more expensive than someone else's. There are always some businesses that make a decision solely on the bottom line. But most thoughtful corporations that I've worked with, they're looking for a qualitative relationship. Now, when we are interacting with others in life, in crisis, at home, the only truly thing we can control is our own emotions. The first thing I teach law enforcement negotiators, if you can't control your own emotions, your own anger, your own frustration, how can you begin to influence someone else? Well, the fact of the matter is you can't. Now, one of the chapters in my book starts off with a partial quote from Rudyard Kipling, and it says, if you can keep your head about you when all else are losing theirs. It's a powerful, powerful thing to keep in mind. In my experience in life, where I have seen people in crisis, you see people perform very well, and you see others that fall apart. What denotes the people that are successful are the ones who can keep themselves focused on the problem at hand. One of the first hijackings I worked in 1985 was the TW-847 hijacking in Beirut. And I interviewed mostly Americans on the plane. I interviewed all the people over the years that we worked that case. And some of the people had these incredible memories because they were focused on surviving and paying attention and staying in control. There's other people that I would ask, I said, well, where were you on the second landing in Beirut? What seat were you in? And they'd say, we landed in Beirut a second time? Yeah, you did. Oh, I didn't even know that. And it's amazing to me that, you know, simple things about looking for detail and engaging actively in the act of survival is sometimes lost on people. Some people have a surviving mechanism by just shutting everything out. That's not the smart way. The people who are engaged and involved, where will I hide my passport? You know, where will I hide my yarmulke, whatever it is I've got on the plane that might cause me a problem. Those people are the ones that, in my experience, have come out the healthiest. Self-control. This is my favorite slide. I could teach a whole 2-week negotiation course with this alone. I defy anybody to challenge the universality of this. This is the old childhood teeter-totter. One kid's up, one kid's down. And what this says is when someone's in an emotionally charged state, their ability to think and act rationally is greatly reduced. Think about it in your own life. When someone has said or done something to you, whether at work or at home, some sort of social interaction, and you really get steamed under the collar and you are pissed off, right then and there it's best to walk away from it. Don't say anything now. You're overly emotional about it. I'm not suggesting you shouldn't be because of what happened, but if you want to accomplish anything of substance, you've got to lower your emotions to see the rational behavior come up. Does that make sense to you? It really is true. And you know it in relationships. You know, I remember I came back from a trip once, You know, in my house, when I was living in Fairfax, Virginia, I had one of these things that controlled like 200 channels on TV. You know, and like most men, my wife had this stupid habit. She'd open the newspaper and actually look at what's on TV tonight. I said, are you kidding me? Boom, 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 boom. I'm going through 200 stations in lickety-split. Unless there's a car chase, an explosion, or an athletic event, I ain't stopping at the home shopping network. You know what I'm saying? So I'm going through this, just gotten home from overseas, drinking a beer, and I hear, no, I don't hear, I feel this presence behind me. Gentlemen, you know what I'm talking about. It's kind of like the American cavalry knew when the Apache were sneaking up. You couldn't see them or hear them, but you knew they were there. And she spoke to me, and our audience is about split here, so the women will understand the first part, the men will have no idea what I'm talking about. She would speak to me in female, and she would say, which, according to their language, means, my beloved husband, I'd like to converse with you. For men, it sounds like, it's nothing to us. So, of course, I disregard it. Boom, 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 boom. Hey, look at that. That blew up. Okay, that's over. What's over here? Boom, 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 boom. And then she goes to level 2 of female speech, which is, I really need to speak to you, my beloved husband. Now, I'm a responsive and engaging kind of husband. I'm pretty much perfect in so many ways. And so I slightly cant my head off the TV momentarily, which in male speak, by the way, ladies, means, yes, my beloved wife, I'm here for you. She apparently didn't understand that. And so she makes even louder noises. Now I know I have to turn around, and give her almost 2 eyes. What? She says, I can't believe it. I can't believe he did it again. Now where does that leave me? I can't just turn back to the TV set. She's now thrown something out there I have to respond to. And so I say, can't believe what? My boss made me work Friday. This is the 3rd Friday. I had to work late in a row, and now my wife's a lucky woman. She's married to a brilliant problem solver. Brilliant. In that nanosecond of informational burst, I identified a problem, identified a solution, and gave her a pathway to success. So I, now taking both eyes off the TV, look at her almost completely and say, you tell him you're not working Fridays late anymore. I mean, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. You'd think she'd been, oh, thanks, husband. You're so wonderful. You're so caring and nurturing. Instead, she goes to the phone and calls up her friend down the road, and they spend 45 minutes on the phone. And her friend, this lady friend, doesn't even give her that stellar advice that I did. She says, oh, I must have made you feel so bad. I had a boss that did that once. And I said, am I getting dinner tonight? I made that all up. That didn't really happen. People want to be listened to. You got to take the time. As a manager in the FBI, when someone would come into my office with a problem, I found very often, very, very rarely did I have to really, come up with this complex solution. People just want to be listened to. Why didn't I get that trip to California? You sent the other 2 guys on. Well, I said, number one, I didn't realize you wanted to go on that trip. I wish you had told me. I would have considered that. Here's why I selected these 2. This was the rationale I used. But give them an opportunity to talk about, how they feel that maybe they were misunderstood, underappreciated, undervalued. That means a lot to people. It means a lot. They don't necessarily expect you to solve their problems. They want to be listened to. Keep that in mind throughout life. So, in all interpersonal relationships, socially, professionally, we need cooperation of others to be successful. We are social animals. We do very little on our own. We need other people. We can promote positive interaction by exerting influence over their behavior. When I mean influence, I'm not talking about manipulation. Nobody likes the proverbial used car salesman when you don't even know this guy. You walk into the lot and say, hey, we're looking for a new car. I know exactly what you need. Come on over here, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. You don't know anything about us, you pompous ass. No. Ask some questions. Get to know us. I don't like a salesman like that. It's phony. It's fake. That's not the way to go. But if you're sincere and genuine, if you take the time to learn about someone. I was telling a story to some of the folks last night. I was in Memphis last year on a business trip, and I sat in the bar because it seemed like the right thing to do. And I had my dinner, and I was having a cocktail, and this guy comes up. He's a very busy man, medical surgical shrubs on, very busy guy. Says, oh, I need a drink, you know, and he comes up right next to me, and I go, uh-huh, here's my target. I said, well, hello, sir, how are you? He said, well, hi, how are you? My name's Gary, what's your name? Bob. Bob, are you a surgeon? No, I'm a medical device salesman. Oh, I saw the surgical scrubs, I thought maybe you were in surgery. Well, I was. I said, well, you go into surgery? But yeah, we got to tell the doctors how to do it. So I already picked up on something here. So you actually tell doctors what to do. Because we hold doctors here in society. I've now put him up 3 notches. You know, and so you see his chest puff out a little bit, you know. Yeah, I show them how these things are inserted and how they work and so forth and so on. Over the next half an hour, I knew where he went to school, I knew his wife, his kids, I knew everything about this guy. And after a while, it was time for me to go to bed. I had to give a big speech the next day. I didn't want to be completely hungover. So I said, hey, Bob, I gotta go to bed now. I said, that was great talking to you. I really learned some interesting things. And he said, well, what was your name again? Gary. Oh, okay. Where do you work? I said, I'm just an old retired guy. I used to be the chief hostage negotiator for the FBI. Have a nice evening. And I walked away, and I looked back, and he was just going like, he was thinking maybe he could have heard a story of interest or two, right? But I'm not making fun of him. What I'm making, the point is, take the time to listen to people. Hear what they have to say. So I'm speaking at Northeastern University, and I kind of went off script. There's about half guys, half women. And, you know, with that dynamic of college, you know, I was saying, let me explain a few things that I wish I'd known, young men, when I was your age. I said, you're interested in some of the young ladies in the room. And what do? You pull up next to him, you say, hi, I'm Bob. I'm on the football team. Pretty athletic guy, pretty smart. People think I'm really cool. I do all these things. And the woman's going, oh, what a jerk, you know? I said, what you want to do is find out about them. So I said, instead, when you meet this young girl, I said, let me give you an example. You're out at a social function off campus, you meet this girl. I said, haven't I seen you on campus? Yes, I go to school there too. Oh, what's your name? Say, at some point you say, well, what do you do? Well, I really don't have any hobbies. No, what do you do? I like to sew. For most guys, it's like, okay, my friend's calling over here. But you should say, you sew? Yeah, what do you sew? Well, I make clothes. Well, that's fascinating. I don't know if I've ever met anybody who makes clothes. Did you make that dress you have on? Well, yeah. So that's wonderful. Where did you learn to do that? I learned it from my granny. You listen. Sounds like your grandmother was very important to you. Oh, Granny was the world to me. I bet you really miss her. 2 hours later, on and on this goes. She's back at the dorm. She's with the other girls. She goes, I met him. This is the one. And he didn't say anything about his athletic prowess. He listened. Listening is the most powerful tool in the world if you do it actively. I'm going to talk a little bit more about active listening skills, but listening is not a passive endeavor. It's acknowledging what you've heard. It's asking open-ended questions. It's summarizing in your own words. So, you know, when your grandmother taught you how to sew, it was a time where you two were really close together and you got to learn things from her and you talked about her past. Yes, you did listen to me. You understand what I said. Not only do you understand what I said, you understand how I feel about it. You use this approach in dealing with clients or your own families, you'd be amazed at how powerful it is, not in a manipulative, tricky way, but in an open and engaging way. So, Dr. Robert Cialdini, who was kind enough to write a little review of my book, came up with these back in '84 in his book about influence. And here's some of the things that are sort of business-like that I think can apply. The first rule of social influence is reciprocity. This is the old golden rule that some of you are familiar with. Someone will do something for you that you do for them. So do something. You'll see people do this all the time. I was in Washington, D.C. giving a speech a couple of weeks ago, and I go in this coffee shop. I got there early. I go in this coffee shop across from the corporate headquarters, and I get a cup of coffee, and the lady behind the counter says, she didn't recognize me, she says, hey, this one's free. This is on the house. Just hope you'll come back again. I can't go to any other place now than that. She owns me. She has my coffee budget for the next 10 years. She, without anything, she just said, hey, this is on me. People like that, you know, and I feel now beholden to act in kind and give her my business. Commitment and consistency. If we've said something before, you know, I would never buy a sports car, you know, and then you go into the showroom and the guy says, hey, have you thought about this fancy sports car? You know, and you say, no, I'm not going to do that. You know, and then your wife says, honey, remember before you said you would never buy a sports car. Ah, that's right. We tend to want to stick with what we said before. It's consistent. We've made a commitment to something. That's a poor example of it in the brief one, but you can think of other examples in work. Social proof. We tend to look for guidance as to what to do based on what we see other people doing. You saw it in this video that Jim showed, you know, the one guy out there, loved the dance moves. Everybody says, oh, well, there's a couple more going out there. I guess it's okay. I can go out there and do it too. We look to others because we're unsure in certain situations. Liking. This is the big one. What is likability? But we know that people will do business with and interact positively with people they like. All right? Powerful thing. How do you become likable? I think you be sincere and genuine is how you become likable. Authority. People tend to listen to people who have authority or a title. Listen to the way we listen to doctors. Television commercials. Who's selling drugs? It's always some guy in a white lab coat with a stethoscope, right? You know, we think this is really good for your arthritis. Oh, he's a doctor. He must know. You know, 5 out of 6 doctors like this toothpaste. Oh, they know what they're talking about. We just believe it. They're symbols of authority. Scarcity. You know, that minivan you're looking for, there's only 2 of them we have left on the lot. And man, there's been a lot of interest. Those things are going quick. What the salesman's telling you, you better move along because if you like it, it may not be available tomorrow. We do this all the time in business. All right, something, you can't see the full slide here. I didn't realize that, but this is something I put together in the FBI to explain to negotiators the process that we go through to get cooperation. This top step that you can't see is cooperation, which is our goal. Cooperation in life, cooperation in business. How do we get there? It's a process, and we start by using active listening skills. Back in the 90s, this gentleman right here, he's not really a gentleman, he was a police officer in Louisiana. He pulls a car over, he's in uniform, he's in his police car, he rapes a woman, gives her his business card. It says, have a nice day. Now, when a police officer does that, he kind of knows there's some negative ramifications to what's going to happen. In fact, one would say, if you have my background, that that's a precursor to he doesn't plan on living very long. So this is probably going to be a suicidal event. He knows the consequences of what he did. He's looking to get in trouble. He drives from the rape scene to the bank where his estranged wife works, where he takes a whole bunch of people hostage, including his former wife. He lines them up. He says, I know you, I don't know you, bang, and kills a woman, mother of 2 young kids. Just kills her. Now what this is, mental health-wise, is working up the courage to do more. The rape was the start, and this is the next step. Well, the Louisiana police, in response, surround the bank, and they bring out his best friend, another officer, whose real name I don't know, but I like to call him Billy Bob. And Billy Bob spends the next few hours basically saying, come out, Chad, that was his name, Chad, come out and talk, on and on and on. So they finally called me after a few hours at the FBI Academy, and I said, well, what does he want? He wants to talk. I said, are you talking with him? We told him we'll talk to him when he comes out. What do you give up by talking to him now? Listen to what he has to say. Acknowledge what he's feeling, what he's going through. And I suggested they put on a female FBI negotiator who was at the scene named Gloria Newport. And the chief and the sheriff were on the phone with him, and they said, we kind of think he don't like women much. He raped one and he shot another one. And I said, but you got to think, when 2 police officers are in the car out and patrol at night, they don't sit there in the night in the patrol car and say, how's your emotional well-being? How's your love life, Fred? Well, you know, been having some trouble in the bedroom. You know, men like to share like that. Not. You know, they don't. They're talking sports and that's it. All right. So they finally agree. They put her on the phone and she says, you know, Chad, I've been listening and, you know, I don't know if I can solve what's going on, but I'd sure like to help. I'd sure like to know about what you're going through. They spoke for hours about his personal issues and concerns, his disappointments in life and work, and with his wife and spouse. She got him to surrender several hours later. Now, I will tell you, looking at that scenario, the rape followed by a cold-blooded murder of a complete stranger with whom he didn't have a relationship with prior, the customer in the bank, and then ultimately surrendering, shows you the power of communication skills. This was a no-winner from the beginning, and yet no further loss of life after negotiations started. And that's because Gloria used these skills to hear what was going on, to let him ventilate his frustrations and anger. Empathy, this is the aircraft carrier story I told you about. And when I spoke to Jim on the phone when he's on that aircraft carrier, I didn't say, Jim, don't be a jerk, put your gun down, come on out, we're gonna have to go up there and kill you. No, I said, Jim, what's going on? What brought you here today? And he talked about how angry he wasn't getting the care he needed in the Veterans Administration, wasn't getting the support, the counseling, all the sorts of things he needed. So I gave him an opportunity to vent and talk about that before I was able to switch him to the local cops, who spent more time with him and got him to surrender peacefully. Now you say, well, this guy's a no good guy, but you know what? He's a veteran of our services. He served his country. He deserved our time. He deserved something more than a SWAT team just coming in and killing him. It was a life worth saving. And they took the time and the energy to do it, and they developed empathy. Now, rapport. Some of you heard about the 1993 Waco situation. I was in charge of the negotiations in that terrible event for the first 26 days out of 52 days. Very tough situation. David Koresh, a cult leader, ends up having a shootout with another federal agency, the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Agency, that was there to serve a search warrant and arrest him for illegal weapons conversion. Once the shootout started, 4 ATF agents were killed, 17 wounded, and about 5 or 6 Davidians were killed. So the FBI comes in to negotiate. Now, there's two kinds of negotiations. There's bargaining, like if someone's in a bank and says, give me a getaway car. And we are highly successful in those because people need us to do something for them. They want something. They need a getaway car. They want money. Whatever it is they want, they have to come to us to get it. Gives us an opportunity to bargain and or influence with them. Now, in a situation like the Waco situation, or a suicide that you might go to, or a domestic situation where a husband and wife are having an argument, the typical demand that you hear is go away and leave us alone. So it's harder to exert that influence. They don't want you there. They don't need you there. So you have to find a way to listen and develop a relationship, and we're quite successful with those as well. But rapport is what we need. After Waco, well, first of all, I'll finish up with Waco. You know, we got 35 people out through good negotiations, including 21 children, and I'm very, very proud of that. But the FBI became impatient. There was a lot of external pressure. They replaced me as the negotiation team leader. I was rotated out, and they brought in another guy that was more susceptible to the hard approach they wanted to take. Not a single other person came out. No one came, and everybody that was left inside eventually died when the FBI put in tear gas and the Davidians started a fire. It's a terrible, terrible debacle in the FBI. The on-scene commander was forced to retire, the tactical team leader was forced to retire, and I was given a promotion because the FBI realized that we were on the right track and that we had made some bad decisions afterwards. So, 3 years later, we go to Montana with another anti-government group, 85-day siege. Hated the government, wanted to kidnap a federal judge and hang him. Engaged in a whole wide range of criminality. We went out there, and this time we didn't start with a massive tactical assault. We surrounded and we negotiated. And we convinced them eventually to come out. Here's the field where we surrendered. That's me. And here's the 4 of the Freemen coming forward and surrendering on the final day, day 85. It took a long time. We were criticized for spending all the money involved. No lawsuits, no reputational loss for the organization, and a happy ending. This is a situation I worked in the early 80s, 1983, I believe. A man had kidnapped his common law wife in Connecticut and brought her to Virginia. She wanted no part of him. They had a son together, a 5-year-old son. They found in a farmhouse in Virginia, and I was negotiating with him for 10 or 12 hours in the bottom of a 100-year-old farmhouse on the stairway, and he's upstairs, threatening to kill her, very angry at her. She did this, she did that, she's a terrible mother, she's a no good this, she's a no good that. I speak to him through the night, things seem relatively calm, and then at some point he decides, I decide to say, you know, Charlie, we've been here all night. We've been here all night. We haven't fired any shots at you, even though you fired some shots at us. We've given you food. We've not rushed you into doing anything, but we'd really like to talk to you now about coming out. And he says, I'll tell you how we're going to end it, Gary. And I go, okay. He said, I'm going to blow her brains out, and you're going to have to come up here and get me. Not what I wanted to hear. But what that triggered in that morning, that first morning, was his continuing effort to just explode mentally. And every grievance he ever had, he just worked himself up into a tornado-like frenzy. It's to the point where he was going to kill her. He called the little boy, said, come to sit next to Daddy, sit on Daddy's lap. He calls her, I can hear this up in the bedroom, sit down next to me. He says, I've got a gun to her head, I'm going to blow her brains out in just a few minutes. She's pleading with him. And I start using every negotiation trick in my bag, and I'm getting nowhere. And the SWAT guys are beginning to move me out of the way, saying, nice job, negotiator. Now we have to go up there. And then finally say, Charlie, is there anything I can do to keep you from doing this? You don't want to kill her in front of her little son. And before I can answer, he says, can you get us out of here? Now, all the time I've been talking, they never asked to leave the farmhouse. And then she says, can we get you out of here? And he says, yeah, we want to get to that helicopter. We had a helicopter parked out on the farm field that he could see. So I went back to the on-scene commander and I said, the only way we're going to resolve this without him killing her and or the child is to give him a sense that he can get to this helicopter. And I suggest, which is a rare suggestion for a negotiator, that we use an open-air assault, prepare to have a sniper take Charlie out. Well, he does come out. He comes out eventually from the house. He's got the little boy tied on his back with a bathrobe strap. He's got her right in front of him with a gun, and they're walking towards the helicopter. The snipers call out, no shot, no shot, no shot. And these are the FBI's finest marksmen. They get about 50 feet from the helicopter. The pilot dramatically lifts up. Big sound grenades, flashbangs are thrown. Charlie's attention is diverted. He goes down on one knee, and he says to her, this is it. Time to die. And as he's bending down, the weight of the little boy on his shoulder pushes his torso further to the ground. To compensate, he raises his torso up. And when he raises his torso up and it comes to the top, the little boy keeps separating backwards. And that's when a sniper killed him from 70 yards. Now, we don't like to do that, and it's unusual that it's the first chapter of my book about negotiations, but sometimes a negotiator has to support a tactical resolution. Negotiation works in the high 90 percentile, but it's not the only solution we have to employ sometimes to save lives. That next Christmas, she sent me this Christmas card. Thank you so much for all you did for little Charlie, big Charlie, and myself. Little Charlie has grown up so much since April. He seems to be doing very well with everything. His, I can't even read that anymore. He goes, yes, you misspelled it. He goes to counseling every 6 weeks, da-da-da-da. I'd like to thank you all for all you did in Virginia when you kept talking, even when Charlie wouldn't talk or let me talk. Your voice was so soothing to hear from me and big Charlie. At one time, Charlie was a very nice person, and I know that he ended up liking you and would have wished you could have met on different terms. So I show that not to brag on myself, but to show you that even in a desperate situation, your communication skills can carry great weight in influencing somebody. I don't believe Charlie would have felt comfortable to come out of that house if he hadn't believed me when I told him it was going to be okay. Now, I don't take no pride in lying to somebody, but my goal was superseded by saving her. All right, a few more quick things. Later at the Lucasville prison riot, which I went to the day after Waco, I wasn't home much in those days. We had inmates from different factions hold hostages. We had to help them get organized, decide what they want, to form committees. Believe it or not, they don't really understand these things naturally in a prison population. You know, their way to resolve problems is to pull out a shank and kill somebody. So we had to explain to them the process of getting organized. They surrendered peacefully. The island of Vieques, one of the last things I worked in Puerto Rico, a base that the U.S. Navy had used since World War II for bombing practice. Many people in Puerto Rico wanted that land reclaimed, so the FBI was asked to remove these protesters, which we weren't keen about doing, but we were ordered to do it, and we were going to go in fast and furious with all our ninja SWAT team guys and land on the beach in rubber boats and haul them off. And we flew over the place the day before in a helicopter, and we found the news media was at all these 5 or 6 camps. And we go, oops. So I suggested, why don't we try a softer, gentler approach? Why don't we have our Puerto Rican native-speaking FBI negotiators go up in golf shirts and khakis and say, hey, we really need you guys to move on, and use their negotiation skills. Every group surrendered peacefully, no problem, no fisticuffs. no risks, all because of good communication skills. Daniel Goleman wrote a landmark book in 1995 called Emotional Intelligence, and what it basically says is the most successful people in life are not those with high IQs necessarily, but they're people that have these skill sets. And I've summarized these in my own words to condense what he said. But if you look at these attributes and try to apply them in your work life, in your personal life, I think you will be better. Empathy. Empathy is not sympathy. I feel sorry for you. Empathy is I understand how you feel about that. That's not agreeing or disagreeing. It's just acknowledging that people have feelings about certain things. Respecting others' perspectives. You know, build a positive relationship. Always think, how can I improve this relationship? Be an engaged listener, not a passive listener. Engaged, active. Ask open-ended questions. Can you tell me more? That's very interesting. Well, what did you like about that? Control your reactions to what others say and do. In other words, if you're attacked, don't respond, overly react to that. Be not judgmental. Learn to be assertive versus angry. Seek cooperation, avoid or resolve conflict. Pretty simple things. Oh yeah, that's common sense. If it was all that common, more people would do it. All right, and those of you who are in leadership positions here, you've really got to make yourself accessible. I learned this a long time ago. When someone wants to come into my office, I've got to put the phone on hold, close the door, come out from behind my desk, sit in a chair next to them, and give them time. And sometimes it's time that you just feel you don't have. And every one of us has this employee who comes in too much and has too much to say. But if it's a valued employee, give them the time, listen to them, and you'd be surprised how positive that is. So remember, the sincere and genuine demonstration of your interest and understanding of another person's perspective is far more important than your ability for a quick solution.